So in this video, I'm going to show you the power of one light off camera in order for you to transform this scene into this. So hi everyone, this is Jiggie, a portrait and wedding photographer from the Philippines, and welcome to the channel. So before anything else, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel and would want to learn more about off-camera flash photography or maybe just photography in general, then this channel is for you. So you might want to consider subscribing, and while you're at it, click that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Now, if you want to see more of my images or keep updated on the things that I am doing, feel free to follow me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. Now, in this video, I am once again taking you behind the scenes in one of my engagement shoots prior to me setting up this YouTube channel. So unfortunately, I will not be able to give you a step-by-step process how I would normally do it. If you guys are new to the channel, go and check out the rest of my videos. You will see I really do give detailed instructional videos when it comes to flash photography. However, since I said that this particular shoot was done before I started this channel, I was actually fortunate enough to have some BTS scenes and some before and afters that I will be sharing with you today. So let's get on to it. So this scene was actually shot in Las Casas in the Philippines. It's a beautiful place where you got a lot of heritage houses. And you could see here the sky really didn't have any details in it. It was very cloudy, it was flat, and we were headed towards sunset. Now the light that I used was this one. This is my Photix Indra 500. The Photix Indra 500 is basically a studio light that has a battery. It allows for high-speed sync, TTL, and it's basically 500 watts of power at your disposal in any location. Now the light modifier that I used was this one. This is the Photix Luna Beauty Dish. Basically, it's a foldable beauty dish because one of the problems of old beauty dishes before was that it's very difficult to travel with it. That's why I like this Photix Luna, because it was collapsible. However, I think they stopped production with this one, but if not, I will put a link in the description below so you can know more about this modifier. Now I have here on top of my camera a trigger that actually controls this flash remotely. This is the Photix Odin, and of course the camera that I used here was my Sony a7R Mark II and a 16-35 f4 lens. One thing to consider also, that this particular video will actually show you the power and dynamic range of that beautiful Sony sensor of the a7R Mark II, considering that's a relatively old camera. It's about 6-7 years old. We're already on the Mark IV now, so even 6-7 years ago, the dynamic range of the Sony cameras was already fantastic. So we ended up shooting here because we actually made a mistake and put the Polaris on the sand without engaging four-wheel drive, so we got stuck. So that's actually one of the things. We're like, okay, we're stuck here, so we might as well just shoot here type of moment. So I had my light here and the sunset was actually here. Now what I did was I actually underexposed the scene in order for me to bring out any of my highlights and details here in the sky, and this is the final output. This one was a straight out of the camera image. You can see here it's a Sony a7R Mark II, sorry, and my shutter speed was 1/200 and my aperture was f5. Now my shutter speed was 1/200 so that I could stay within my flash sync speed and get the maximum power of my flash. But at this particular moment, since I was just shooting at f5, I think my flash power at that time was just about 1/16th power. That's how much power I actually had with my Photix Indra. Now, you can see here, since I shot this one with a 16-35, I was prone to distortion, which personally I don't like. Well, it's something that I tried not to get, but since this was a composition that I chose to do, I had to sacrifice a bit of distortion here, which I would then now adjust in post-production. So when I shot this one, I already knew that the dynamic range of my camera actually had more detail here, since I was able to preserve my highlights properly. And that's exactly what I did in post-production, as you can see here in the final image. Here in the final image, you see that I brought out the shadows here, removed some of the shadows, and I fixed the distortion here in the wheels. I made it circular so that there's no more distortion. Now I also shifted my white balance just for me to be able to get that warmer tone representing the sunset. Now after that, Aside from shooting that particular scene that I just showed you, I decided to also shoot them without the Polaris so that it's dedicated more on them. So I made them pose with my light here and basically just give them a very normal pose to do, like the girl was freezing and the guy would just offer his jacket as a form of chivalry. Then of course I had my light here in the same general direction of where my sun was coming from, and again you could see that there was really no cloud details here, but by underexposing the scene, I think I underexposed this about 2 stops under just to be able to bring that, or maybe about 1 to 1/3 stop under. I honestly don't really remember, but since I am shooting with live view, I basically just did exposure compensation. And by the way, I shot everything in aperture priority, and all I was doing was really just adjusting my exposure compensation, checking my live view to how my ambient light was and how I wanted my ambient light to be. In other words, when I saw the cloud details already, that was enough for me, and the rest was just being lit by my Photix Indra 500. So this scene now created this particular image straight out of the camera. My settings were still exactly the same, and this time I had my lightsman here in the scene because initially I was actually shooting this vertical, but I wasn't getting any of the cloud formations that I really wanted. So I then decided to do this horizontal and still kept him here just, so that I don't need to adjust my flash power anymore. Then afterwards in post-production, all I needed to do was remove him and again bring up my shadows a little bit and make my white balance warmer to be able to give that very nice warm glow that's normally seen in most beautiful sunsets. And then finally, I had the sunset behind them because as you can see here, the sun was already setting, so I won't get any hot spots anymore, and I would just get that burst of color in the sky. You could already see here that there was some color already in the sky. Unfortunately, again, we didn't have too much cloud detail yet, but let me stress again, by underexposing the scene, you will be able to get the cloud details that normally you don't see with the naked eye. That's one thing I love about this technique of underexposing, then exposing properly using your flash. Okay, and by the way, I shot everything in RAW. That's why I am able to actually recover a lot of my shadows and do a lot of my color correction. So this particular scene gave me this output straight out of the camera. You could see that there was a lot of color already here and a lot of cloud formation here. Plus the sun had already set, so that wasn't really a problem with having hot spots here. And this was my final output. So this one, I basically pulled a lot of shadows here in the faces in order for me to be able to remove the contrast in their faces, but that's a beautiful thing about shooting in RAW. You could actually do a lot of manipulation after post. The most important thing is you get your light correct in your subject and the balance, of course. So again, here I just merely brought out some of the details here and did a little bit of color correction. In other words, I just basically shifted my light or my white balance to a warmer tone, and this was a final output from an image like this. I was able to edit it and bring out a lot of the colors and balance out here. This one I actually cloned so that I can remove this one here, this really ugly part here. So I just cloned it to make it look more seamless. So that's how simple it was. Basically, all I needed was just one light, a very small modifier, and it's just a matter of balancing light between your ambient light and your flash. In other words, I normally really do underexpose the scene to bring out the details that normally my eye cannot see but my camera can. Plus, it's important that you know the dynamic range of your camera or what your camera is capable of doing. And I knew that the 41 or the 42 megapixel sensor of my Sony a7R II at that time was more than capable of recovering the highlights and the shadow details. That's why I was able to balance my light properly by just bringing down my highlights and making sure that my flash was properly exposed for the scene, so that any color correction and any correction that I do actually in post-production, everything is balanced. So if you have any questions with regard to this video, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And again, if you did enjoy this video, please do consider subscribing. And while you're at it, click that notification bell so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Now, for you guys who want to learn more about off-camera flash photography, I actually hold one-on-one online workshops, the details of which I will put in the description below. And finally, if you want to see more of my images, you could always find me on Instagram. It's at Jiggie Alejandrino. Okay, till the next video.